Welcome to Political News and Views with Congressman Ed Towns of Brooklyn, New York, representing the 10th Congressional District, programming with your concerns in mind. And now, your host, Congressman Ed Towns.
Welcome to News and Views. I'm delighted to have with us today Representative Kucinich from the great state of Ohio by the way of Cleveland. No doubt about it. But let me ask you, Congressman, tell the viewers a little bit about your background. I want the people in Brooklyn to know who you are.
Well, I grew up in the city of Cleveland, the oldest of 7. My parents never owned a home. We were renters. And as the family grew to 7 children, which I was the oldest, we lived in 21 different places by the time I was 17, including a couple cars. So from that experience, I was able to develop a real compassion for what people go through just to get a roof over their heads, to be able to put clothes on the kids' backs and food on the table and being able to have a decent education and all those things that mean something to families. I know about it. I've been there. You know, Langston Hughes once wrote, "Life for me had been no crystal stair." And I understand what people go through, and that really has informed everything that I do in public life.
Right. I know you were the mayor of Cleveland, and did you hold any other positions?
Well, yeah. I started in city politics 40 years ago as a candidate for city council in 1967, elected in 69. I was served as the clerk of the Cleveland Municipal Courts, which is the second highest elected office in Cleveland, in charge of the municipal court system. And then I was elected mayor of Cleveland, the youngest person ever elected mayor of a big city, 30 years ago. I've served 4 terms in the council, clerk of courts, mayor of Cleveland, later on a state senator, and then and now 6-term member of the United States Congress. So I have a 40 years of involvement in politics.
Your whole life has been this public service.
It has been.
Yeah. Now, I know you were very involved in trying to impeach the Vice President of the United States, Vice President Cheney. Now, one would ask, why would you try to impeach the Vice President and not the President of the United States?
Well, it started off with an effort to impeach the Vice President because, let's face it, if you were to impeach Mr. Bush first and he was removed, then Mr. Cheney would become president. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that if you were to go after Mr. Cheney for his violations and be able to prove those, I think it would result in the resignation of the president himself because the two work together. Where it is now is as follows. We have 23 members of the House of Representatives who are co-sponsors of H.R. 333. We have a number of members who show their support for the resolution, the privilege resolution that was brought before the Congress that asked for an impeachment of the Vice President. Now, to me, this isn't really about the personality of Mr. Cheney. This is about the Constitution of the United States. You know, I carry a copy of the Constitution with me at all times, right in here. We take an oath of office, you and I, to defend this Constitution. So does the President, the Vice President. And Mr. Cheney, unfortunately, lied to take this country into a war against Iraq. He said that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, was active in Al-Qaeda's role on 9/11. He knew better. He tried to take us into a war against Iran. He knew better. So for those reasons, articles of impeachment were brought forward. Those are, in essence, the charges, the articles in the impeachment resolution. There has to be accountability, or our government falls apart. You know, in our Constitution, Article 2, Section 4 gives the power of impeachment to the Congress in order to hold executives in check. Because if they're abusing the law and there isn't the impeachment, if you don't have any access to impeachment, these people become monarchs. So I really see this as standing up for the Constitution and making Mr. Cheney and inevitably Mr. Bush accountable.
What is the process? Where is it now? I mean, I know it was moving along. Where is it now?
Well, first, let me explain a little bit about the process. An impeachment is like an indictment. If someone gets indicted, it doesn't mean they're convicted. It means that charges have been brought forth. An impeachment effectively consists of charges, articles being brought forth against the Vice President or the President. This resolution and the 2 resolutions are both in the Judiciary Committee. So the Judiciary Committee, it's up to them to hold hearings. Now, Mr. Conyers is a wonderful man. He's a powerful chairman of the Judiciary. But inevitably, it's not his call. It's the call of the leadership of the House of Representatives. The leadership of the House has said that impeachment's off the table. I don't think that's a wise decision. I think that we need to appeal to them to say that this is the way that we protect the balance of power, that we have accountability in government, that we make sure that there's no breakdown in our democracy. If there's a wrong that's been committed, there has to be some accountability. So there's still this discussion going on, and impeachment is kind of, at this point, in the Judiciary Committee.
So there's no hearings have been scheduled, or
no hearings have been scheduled.
Right. Let me ask you, moving along with something else, in terms of, there's been a few issues in the Congress that you've sort of taken a different kind of position from the regular Democratic Party, would say, or Democratic leadership. You know, why and what makes Kucinich, you know, sort of see things from a different viewpoint? You know, I mean, there's been many things that have happened where you've just sort of like almost gone it alone. Why?
Look, you have to look at how I grew up. I just wrote a book about it called The Courage to Survive, and in that book I talk about my experience in the inner city, growing up in Cleveland. You know, people are struggling to make ends meet. Some aren't going to vote for a war when we got matters here at home we got to take care of. That war wasn't about defending America. That war killed a lot of innocent people. So I challenge the war at every stand. Health care. 46 million Americans don't have any health care. I grew up in a family where there were a lot of health problems. Sometimes we were covered, sometimes we weren't. Doesn't matter, even if you have an insurance policy, you still might be stuck with other payments that might put the reach of good health care a bit beyond your means. And I remember where I came from. And because I remember where I came from, I stand for a not-for-profit health care system where everyone's covered as a basic right, not based on ability to pay. And I stand for education for all because I know what education meant for me. It meant a chance to have opportunities in the world. And I understand that we have to have good neighborhoods, solid neighborhoods. That's why I'm for housing, decent housing for all.
Yeah. Well, but what about when a situation where the Democratic caucus and Democratic leadership comes and they say, wait a minute, we need to give money, fund the war, with a definite date for them to pull out and bring our troops home.
Well,
and you say no.
Well, I say no because I know that that's not where it's going to go. It's going to go where we are now, in retreat. And the fact of the matter is that the leaders, here's what they should have been doing. Should go to the president and say, Mr. President, we're not going to give you another dime for the war. Because the fact of the matter is, if you don't offer a bill, there's no money. And so what I've suggested is that our leaders go to the President of the United States and say, not another dime. Use the money you have now to bring the troops home. Set in motion an international security and peacekeeping effort to stabilize Iraq as our troops leave. End the occupation, close the bases, bring the troops home. We've got to get out of there. We've got to bring our young men and women home. Now, our Democratic leaders have said, wait a minute. We see another way. We're going to keep trying to fund the war and keep it going, and set a timetable for withdrawal. Well, some of our friends who are talking about 2013 now as a time to get out. No, that's not acceptable. And even in the latest budget, in the omnibus, the latest thing is our leaders are saying no timetables. So you see, we started with timetables, and then we said we didn't have the votes. We go to no timetables, we're still having trouble getting votes. I'm saying you don't have to go through all that. Don't give them the money. Don't put it in a bill. Don't have a vote. Leadership takes the lead. President has to follow. He's got no choice but to bring those troops home if the Democratic leaders tell them they're not going to give him another dime. And that's what I would do.